Welcome back to the shop. Today we're continuing on with our Keepsake box. The first thing I take care of is cutting a spot for a secret drawer. My utility knife was initially only going to be used to mark a line on the top for the jigsaw to cut, but it sliced through the wood like butter, so I used it to cut all the way through. To fit the bottom of the box, I used the router to cut a rabbet into the inside of the walls and use a carving knife to square the corners. Before I put the bottom in, I measure and install shelf supports for the box's false bottom. The secret drawer is a simple construction. 1/8" plywood is set into a slot in the cedar wall I cut out previously. The drawer walls are also strips of cedar, and the drawer turns out to be rigid and pretty strong for how small it is. A small block of hardwood shaped something like this is how I'll latch onto the drawer. The final shape is a bit different for simplicity's sake. Now while I'm gluing the trim to the box, I'll take some time to complain about how difficult cutting those corner pieces was. The box requires 8 pieces cut for the corners, but I ended up cutting about 15. I had tried to make a jig to ensure even cuts, but I couldn't come up with anything to work with the small pieces. So, being stuck working them by hand, even trying my best to keep the wood vertical as I cut, I messed up about 7 or 8 times. The most aggravating part was that I cut the first 6 like it was nothing, and the last 2 took forever to get right. The first latch I used for the drawer was 2 pieces of plastic epoxied together. This ends up having the right shape to hook the drawer, but the epoxy wasn't strong enough to handle the force from the spring. Next, I finished the basic build of the drawer by attaching the trim piece to the front. Here's how the drawer works. The hook grabs the hardwood block, and when released, the spring forces the drawer out. I glue in some guides here to keep the drawer straight while it slides. Some final cuts to make include carving a new hook out of a single piece of plastic and cutting an opening for the handle to come through into the main compartment. The inlay started out in SketchUp and then was printed off to overlay on the wood. I traced the lines with my carving knife to start. I did do some chisel work, but after the router carved out the large spaces, I used very small files to do the rest of the work. It took forever to do, but turned out nicely. Now I'm measuring a location for the inlay, which I'll then cut out with my router. I'll use my carving knife to square out the corners that the router can't reach. Next, I'll glue the inlay and leave it to dry. This is where we'll leave it for now. Next time we'll cover exterior finish, final interior work, and finishing touches. See you next time.